of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are two types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them, or either of them, can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. A devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavat leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavat. And the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and His pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical. The devotee Bhagavat is a direct representative of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So by pleasing the devotee Bhagavata, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavata. Human reason fails to understand how, by serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavat, one gets gradual promotion on the path of devotion. But actually, these are facts explained by Srila Narada Deva, who happened to be a maidservant son in his previous life. The maidservant was engaged in menial service of the sages, and thus he also came in contact with them. And simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality Srila Narada Deva. These are the miraculous effects of the association of the Bhagavatas. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatas, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The messages of the book Bhagavata therefore have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata. And the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. Translation: by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Should I say a few words? Or we have okay. Yesterday, Guru Kripa Prabhu, he was also talking about this principle. Here we're talking about Srila Narada Deva, how he took birth as Narada Muni, simply by taking the remnants of foodstuffs from the pure devotees and by being in their association. Guru Kripa was mentioning how us Westerners, our births in the West was not a very good birth, and how fortunate those are to take birth in India. And this, for some of us, especially in the early days of ISKCON, was, we could call a sticky point, because Prabhupada was always saying that if you don't complete your business, you can take birth in India. Well, for myself and some others, that was a frightening idea, because my only understanding being in India was I was sick. Over the whole time I was with Srila Prabhupada, I was sick. So when I left India, and I left Prabhupada's service at the end of 1973, I in the West, I began to become healthy again. 8 months later, I'm back in New Vrindavan, the very place I became Prabhupada's servant, and Brahmananda was there as his secretary, and again, Prabhupada's servant was gone, Satsvarup Maharaj. So Brahmananda said the same thing. It was just deja vu. The day before Prabhupada left, he came up to me. Second time this happened, and he said, "Do you want to be Prabhupada's servant?" He said, "We're going to India." And now I was married, my wife was pregnant, and I'm living in a Prabhupada hut in New Vrindavan. And I was weighing, stay here in New Vrindavan in this little mud hut, go to India with Prabhupada. For some of you, it might have been an easy choice. For me, I thought, and I said, I'll go to India. Anyway, we came back to India in 1974, September, for the Fox opening. Prabhupada was very sick, I became very sick, everyone was getting sick. And these Prabhus and so many others, they're just working away. Anyway, time passed, and after we came back to America, now we're in Hawaii. And on a morning walk on what was called Magic Island, Prabhupada said Hawaii was paradise. He said heaven on earth. For those of you that have been there, that's a little bit true. It's like heaven on earth, Hawaii. Prabhupada would take his morning walks and the sea breeze is blowing. You could see everyone's dhotis blowing with the trade winds in Hawaii. And again, Prabhupada's talking about this principle. If you don't finish your business, then by the mercy of the Lord, you can come back and take birth in India. Well, now there's myself, Paramahamsa Swami, and Nitai, who was his Sanskrit editor at the time. And somehow or other, I was actually the senior devotee in Prabhupada's entourage, which is interesting. And we had all just come back from India, all having malaria, dysentery, jaundice, the usual things. And we all just look at one another and we're like, we're doing all this and we have to come back to India next life? Like this is our reward for devotional service, is to take birth in India. And they're poking me because I was the oldest in our group. Ask Prabhupada, do we actually have to take birth in India? Is this if we're not going to be Krishna conscious? And we didn't, at that time, after 4 years or so, we figured out it's going to take more than one lifetime. As years go by, you realize it's going to take more and more and more years than one lifetime. But we were thinking maybe a few lifetimes, but we didn't want to take birth in India. So they're saying, ask Prabhupada, do we have to take birth in India? And I never like to ask Prabhupada questions because you could just get that look, like, you fool. And I didn't like that look. I had learned over time, 2 years. So I didn't ask. And the walk went on and it finished. Then we get back into the car. And in this car ride, because we're all going back, the three of us with Prabhupada, the driver was there. And then Prabhupada's sitting in the front seat. And myself, Nitai, Paramahamsa, we get into the back seat. We're like the Three Stooges, in the back. It's an American comedy group. Oh. No, I can see. So, again, they're poking me from both sides. I'm in the middle. Ask Prabhupada. This is how much we feared being in India. Ask Prabhupada, do we have to take birth in India? So finally I said, Prabhupada? Mm-hmm. I said, on the morning walk, you were describing, Krishna consciousness, devotional service. If we don't finish up our business, we come back, we take birth in India, in a devotional family, wealthy, aristocratic. Yes, yes. I said, well, my question is, do we have to take birth in India? Oh, no, he said, no, not anymore. He said, we have centers all over the world. He said, any one of these places, He said these Hare Krishna, you can take birth in as a devotee. And we're like, oh, thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada. But actually, to be able to take birth in India, in a devotee family, there is nothing better. I mean, I see when I come here, for so many, you local Indians, it's so easy. Everything seems so easy. Chant Hare Krishna, 16 rounds, finished. You know, do the puja in the morning to the deities, done. Tulsi puja, take prasadam, go to work, come have your little tiffins. This is impossible. 40 years later, I can't do any of these things. You know, I'm unable to do these things. So I would be happy at this point in my life. I've arrived at this stage, probably because of bottled water. You know, that I would take birth in India now. I think it would be okay. It's acceptable. Maybe I haven't had malaria. I've been here 4 years, living in Govardhan, living in Mayapur, living in Vrindavan. So it's working out by Srila Prabhupada, even within this lifetime. So now I get a glimpse. Although it would still be nice to take birth in a good devotee family, perhaps somewhere in the West. It might still be nice. So, Surabhi Prabhu, if you're ready to. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Hare Krishna. It was brought to my attention that you have been here for a week and all you senior God brothers have a good time talking about the old days and stories with Prabhupada. I said, but there's so many new disciples, there's so many young devotees here. And they have to hear the stories, how we came out of the woodworks, how we lived in a very miserable world, and then Prabhupada came by and took us. But as I was here, and I was walking around meeting so many old friends and also young, new disciples who would come up to me, and they would ask a lot of questions, and they were inspired by, you know, the sacrifices that we had made. And then I asked questions to them. I said, well, where are you from? And I found out that many of them, they actually were born from devotee parents, or they came from very pious backgrounds, in India as well as around the world, because a lot of Indian people left and went to America, to England, many parts of the world. And some of them became devotees from birth. Actually, they were born, either their mother or their father was a devotee. And they had to hear all these stories from us. And then I saw the purity in them. You know, it's like 2-3 generations after us. And this is what this movement has become. Actually, we are getting a whole bunch of very pure people here that can chant and can actually hear the chanting. They can listen to the name, and their faces are very, very clean, very beautiful. And then, but they want to know from us, because we were with Prabhupada. And even though they're disciples of new spiritual masters, Srila Prabhupada is our grand guru. He is for everyone, because all the books, or most of the books, are all written by him. Everybody studies the scriptures from Prabhupada and teaching us the basics and the values of Krishna consciousness. So I was sitting last night and somebody said there's one devotee, he's very young and he likes to speak to you, or he likes to ask some questions. I had a devotee said, oh, my Guru Maharaj told me to go to you and ask for blessings. And I was overwhelmed because I wasn't used to that. to have these young, pure souls coming to me. We always looked at ourselves as being slightly contaminated with a past that could pop up any time, and then Maya would be around the door to take us away again. And some of it succeeded and some failed. But this kind of getting together here and seeing probably for the last time so many God brothers and God sisters and telling their stories about how they came to Srila Prabhupada, for us of course is extremely important. But then someone said, well, what about the young ones? What are you talking about for them? What inspiration can they have to continue and also do the same what we did to Prabhupada, or how we try to serve Prabhupada? And then it's like something that I never really thought about, because we have the spiritual masters, they have their students, their disciples, but they are curious because Srila Prabhupada is so central in everything, and they want to hear from almost everyone what it was to be with Srila Prabhupada. So it's what did it, like you can see with Guru Kripa, he's a tough guy, and Prabhupada got him to do anything. And not just anything, he gave him spiritual life, and he gave him a service. And he took that service at heart, just like Srila Prabhupada got his instructions to go to the West, although it looked like an impossible situation. And he just did what he was asked to do. And in the same way, myself and many others, Gunarnava, Dhananjay is there, all of the people here in Vrindavan, sitting here, they were all told something, or at least they knew what they had to do to please Srila Prabhupada. So I was telling that story. I said, what you can learn from this is that even though fallen entities like us, and you know, you are very lucky because you're born with decent parents. Many of us came from families that didn't exist, or just, if we were lucky, we still had one mother or one father somewhere. And I said, you have a very high level birth, and your service can be done very simple and very pure from the very beginning. And you should always keep that, because we didn't have that. We were constantly struggling with our past. It was always coming back. And Prabhupada, he took these qualities that we had when we were young or where we failed in, and he would bring them out and engage us. The things that some of us, we were trying to make a career in our lives, then he would say, in my case, he would say, you should just do it for Krishna. So we had talents. A lot of those early devotees were very talented, and you can see what they have accomplished. But without Prabhupada, nothing would have happened. They would all end up miserable, like a failure, or the worst conditions you can imagine what we ended up with. There's a lot of genius people on this planet that just disappear because they have no guidance. They don't have a spiritual master. They have great ideas about ideals, but it's just wasted because they don't know what direction to take. So being born first generation, second generation, and now I can see this third generation, very pure young disciples of the new spiritual masters, and always Prabhupada. So that was basically something I wanted to bring out as an encouragement, and that this should be for the young and the old. It is for everyone. The other thing is that, coming back to some talk we had yesterday, and when I told my story about getting instruction to design the temple, people were asking about how did Prabhupada know? You just came there and you happened to see it. Actually, I don't know. Now, he may have inquired about my past, what I was doing. I was in Amsterdam, and I helped a little bit because I was asked to do so. First thing was to put in that big floor so that the devotees wouldn't catch a cold. And then later on I was asked to paint something, or maybe I had to paint the name first. And Dhananjaya was there. And then little things like that, but I wasn't into it. I was quite critical about everything. I felt the living standard was low, and it was too miserable, too cold. But the devotees took it. They would go out in the market with those wheelers full, I don't know how they call them, bakfiets. It's a bicycle with a big, in the front. They would go to Kinkerstraat, and then all the merchants, they would put all the vegetables in, and oh, here they are again. And then carts full of food would be driven back to the temple, and then cooking for the hippies, the prostitutes, whatever walked in. And in those days, everybody had long hair, and they have, if you have long hair and you're not a lady, the guys, they let it, go a little bit. So they had different creatures there living. And they would come to the temple to get shaved up, but only to get rid of their problem. So I remember Bhumadev, he had a duty, like at least 2 or 3 every day, in the morning or in the evening or whatever. He had this buzzer, and he was just, and you saw what was in the hair there, and I was going like, whoa, what a life. And some became devotees, But so many people were fed with prasadam. In the morning, Mangalarti was crowded because the hippies had no place to sleep, and it was cold, so they would come to the temple, get free breakfast. The prostitutes were just there because they had their night duties or whatever, and they would come, and they were all. That was.
The system in Holland, when you get something, you need to put your old thing out, and someone put an old bed out. So these prostitutes, remember that? They brought a bed.
Oh yeah. The thing is that in Amsterdam, people would, when they don't need it anymore, they would put mattresses in the street or old sofa sets and chairs. And then the prostitutes would bring it to the temple, because they saw the devotees sleeping on the floor. They said, I got a mattress for you. Oh, what kind of mattress? And Dhananjaya actually felt quite at home in between all these people. And he was just continuing his preaching, very serious, very Scottish. And that is what happened there. Then, so I saw that, and I was, I think this is pretty interesting. But what took me to Krishna, or at least when I got interested, is they had the little books there. And it started when I was in Hong Kong just a couple of weeks ago. There was a couple, they just had a honeymoon. One boy from Argentina and one girl from France. And she was one of those lucky ones whose mother was a devotee, and she spent time in Mayapur in school. And the boy, he looked very very pure, like very simple, like So he came just from normal family, but his mother also, they collected the books. There was always books of Prabhupada on the shelf in their house, in Spanish, I guess. And he started reading, and I asked him, I said, what was the books that he said? Oh yeah, he said that I got attracted to Krishna consciousness by the books. But he had never seen a devotee, he had never been out, his mom had some books there. And then I said, well, what was the book that turned you on most? He said, well, then he mentioned 3, and one of them was Going Back, and there was a few, those small little books that were written specially. And then it took me, and then I remembered that I got a little book, and I read it. It was Easy Journey to Other Planets. And that totally changed my life. So that's when I started thinking about Krishna, or the possibility that there is a God. And for just one simple reason, that in there Prabhupada said that God is a kid. He's a young, very healthy, beautiful young boy. And then I was thinking that if we're living in the perverted world here, what do we adore? It's the young people. These are the only people that fall in love. Everybody else struggles through life, or they're babies and they just create chaos, but parents love them. But there's only one period when you see in our life as an example that the only ones that fall in love are young people. Especially if they're beautiful, attractive, they like each other even more. So then I thought, so that must be the reflection of the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, the highest form of love must also be between boyfriends and girlfriends. And then the story of Krishna and the gopis and all, everything made sense without having to explain, without getting into sahaja kind of thinking, because we never know anything about it. I just think this makes sense. God must be a young man. And then the energy, because it was explained about the sun and the rays of the sun, the energy and the source are always together. So boys and girls are together. Every song you hear in the 50s, it's always boys and girls. So everybody is aspiring for that kind of relationship. So then I could see that just little things like that, and I didn't realize a lot of it till I spoke with the young devotees. How did they come to Krishna? How did they find it? How could they become attracted to Krishna consciousness? Because we always thought it was pretty tough, being born in India, and then suddenly Prabhupada just opened up the whole world. This is my house, or this is Krishna's house. So anywhere born with devotees or near devotees is also a very high birth, and that can save you. So for you that are having that fortunate situation, don't spoil it. Don't listen too much to us. We are just coming out of the woodwork, and Prabhupada saved us. And you are saved already. You just have to, like Prabhupada used to preach to the Indian people in a very mild and a very relaxed way. And he said, you're already there. You're with Krishna. Why do you want more? I don't have to teach you anything. You just chant Hare Krishna and do everything, but do it for Krishna. Try to understand that Krishna is the source of everything. And please Krishna. Do service for Krishna. And then people walked out, and people from India, they understand that, but they get sidetracked because, but Swamiji, there's so many gods. I said, yes, there are many gods. But I tell you, go for Krishna. All right. And I see here, and there's a lot of people from the villages, they come. We have Gaurnitai, we have Krishna Balaram, but Radha and Krishna is packed all the time. The darshan, they're fighting over there. If you want it peaceful, you go sort of in the middle. But if you try to sort of go in there and have darshan, right, they have darshan, they push you away, poke you away, and you have no chance. So Radha and Krishna is the deity here, and you can see it from the people. And they're just born in India, and they have it, that they love Radha and Krishna. And in their family life, little kids, they think they're Krishna if it's a boy. When it's a girl, then he's a gopi. They dress them up like that. So it's a reality. But the philosophy has disappeared. And for the young devotees, it is to bring back the philosophy, especially those who are Indian or live in India, to bring it back, to get the whole of India to its original culture of Varnashram Dharma, to make a statement in the world that, you know, that people say, well, Thailand is a Buddhist country, this is this country, Hindu, that is Nepal. But India, nobody knows where India stands. And of course the politicians, they're trying to make it like the Hindu is the value that is for them important. But Hinduism is just a name. It's not a religion, it is not really the Shastra, just people that live on that side of the Indus River. And that's the Hindus, and that's their religion, that's their tradition. But they're going to go a little bit further and see the real history of India, which is incredible. I mean, for us foreigners coming here, and me spending time with the temples and meeting, even the Muslims I worked with in Makrane and here, they were all respectful to the religion of the Varnashram, because the culture of even designing the temples that are all over India, traditional temples, they were all involved, because in the old days every group was connected with either some Maharaja, and they would build palaces, or they had to work on temples. So there was the level of artisans was extremely high, and they would just repeat hundreds and hundreds of years the same thing. And now it's time to become international and to let the world really know what this culture is all about. And I think for the young ones that can learn this from their guru, to follow their instructions, I think it is your task to continue this, to really spread it out, that this is what India has given the world. Prabhupada always liked to see that or say that. And it is the most auspicious place to be born. But he created, as Srutakirti was saying, he said he has created so many centers, like many Indians, like when you go to New York, you have Chinatown. So now we have India towns, but where we have Krishna consciousness. And these towns can grow a little bit more and give the example how peaceful we can tell the world that Krishna consciousness is the process for peace, and this is the way that we can set things right. And that would be my advice, and hopefully inspiring the young devotees here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
I didn't realize I was going to have to say anything this morning. So, what's the time? 10 o'clock?
10 before.
So is this going till 10 o'clock? 9:30. So what's the time? 10 to 9. Okay. I want to take advantage of all of your presence this morning to relate to you a very, very important story that happened very early on in Vrindavan. And if I look at someone was saying to me yesterday, I forget who it was, where were the huts placed, the original huts that we lived in when we were building the temple? And I think they were over there on the borders of the Gurukul, because there was a wall or a fence, wasn't there? And we had that hut right across. So just not too far away, just where you see the Gurukul building and the temple area where it met, that was where the wall was coming across the property there. Anyway, we were living in these huts, and I would say it was about 18 months in from when they were actually built. And I remember there was a sannyasi, one of the first sannyasis in the movement, Devananda. I think he took sannyas in LA, Los Angeles. There was Surabhi, myself, there was I keep forgetting his name, Manasahita from Italy. Madhu Savita, he's a GBC member. And we were all there that afternoon, and we periodically, before that particular afternoon, we'd see this sannyasi on a rickshaw, and he had very light saffron cloth. And that was unusual for us because we had just come from the West, and to see another young, because at that time I was like 21 years of age, and Surabhi 23, and you know, that age group. And we used to see this sannyasi riding around on a rickshaw in Vrindavan. We thought, oh, I wonder who that is, you know, and sometimes, right from a distance, he even waved to us like that, but we never got up close and associated. So Devananda made his project to somehow or other locate this sannyasi and see who he was. And so one time this sannyasi came one afternoon and we got to know who he was. And his name was Lalitanand Goswami, and he was initiated, he got actual Brahmin initiation and sannyas initiation from Prabhupada's godbrother, who lived just in Vrindavan, but he had that institute across the road, Ban Maharaj. So after he had associated with us, he again received that taste of association. Dadami pratigranati guyamakati prichati. And then he started to open up and reveal his heart to us. And actually he was an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. His name was Rishikesh Brahmachari. And he got initiated in the early days. I think it was in San Francisco. And his heart was very heavy. He said, and then he slowly, over a period of 3 or 4 days, he wouldn't leave our association. He wanted to stay with us in the huts. And basically, the story goes like this. When Srila Prabhupada returned to India, because he was feeling really sick, he thought Prabhupada would never return to America. So somehow or other he collected funds and he came back he came to India looking for Srila Prabhupada. But by the time he had done all that, Srila Prabhupada got well and he was back in America preaching. So he was sort of stranded here. And as a result, he took shelter of Ban Maharaj. And he was a very, very intelligent brahmachari. And he learned, over a period of years, he learned fluent Hindi, Bengali, Sanskrit. He was very learned. But when he came into our association, he was lamenting very, very much that he left Prabhupada. And he had changed his name from Rishikesh to Lalitanand Goswami. His heart was heavy because he was very sincere and very open and very honest. And he was saying, how can I come back to Prabhupada? So we encouraged him to write a letter to Prabhupada, who was at that time in Calcutta. And then Prabhupada wrote back and he said, if you want to come back to me, you have to renounce your name, your danda, your sannyasi dress, and you go into Loi Bazaar and you buy a white dhoti and you come to me. I'll be in Mayapur by the time you arrive. And he said, because you are Rishikesh Brahmachari. So he did exactly what Prabhupada told him. He took off all his sannyasi clothes and he put his danda at Radha Damodar temple in Prabhupada's rooms. And immediately he felt so much, it was like as if, you know, all those years of being with Bon Maharaj and also experience what you call ambivalence. Ambivalence means when you have two different emotions connecting with one another at the same time within you. So after experiencing for many years that ambivalence of feeling guilty on the one hand that he had changed his spiritual identity, but on the other hand he had learned so much. He was become very knowledgeable and he was chanting and he was very fixed up. So when he arrived in Mayapur, Prabhupada was in his room surrounded by all his big guns there. And he came in, Prabhupada recognized straight away, so he laid dandavats full out at Prabhupada's feet. And he was crying. His tears were dripping down his eyes and he was shaking because he was also very fearful, feeling guilt that he had done the wrong thing. And because of his humility and his crying out to Prabhupada that he'd actually wanted to come back to Prabhupada's lotus feet, he was begging Prabhupada, please forgive me, Prabhupada. Please forgive me. He kept on over and over again saying that. Because he told us the story when he returned to Vrindavan. Prabhupada said, yes, I forgive you. You are a very good boy, and I forgive you. You were very innocent, you did not know. The very next day, Prabhupada gave him Brahmin initiation, and he initiated him, Rishikesh Ananda Goswami. And that day, Prabhupada asked him to give class in Mayapur, which he did. And everyone was very impressed by the class that he gave. But then, he went back into Srila Prabhupada's room and he said, Srila Prabhupada, please forgive me, but I have one request, if you would please kindly grant that request. And Srila Prabhupada said, what is that request? And Rishikesh Ananda said, would you please translate Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita into English? And Srila Prabhupada says, that is a very nice request, and I will do it. So as a result of that particular Leela with Prabhupada, we have the Upadeshamrita today. And it's a beautiful instructive literature by Rupa Goswami. Oh, right. So Srutakirti has just told me some more information that it was Rishikeshananda that did all the work.
He did the translation.
The translation on the book. So
He was I was there at that time, so I met him, and he was very wonderful, and he really liked me very much. I was brahmachari at the time, so he was so happy to be back with Srila Prabhupada and Prabhupada's disciples, because there was no comparison. There was lots of philosophy was there where he was, a little on the dry side. So that's what he had experienced for some years. So over the next few years we were able to spend, and like you say, he was very open about everything he had been through. But he did in the room, you said all the big guns were there, and there was also a little toy gun, and that was me. I was always somewhere in the corner.
toy.
Yes, and anyway, we had very nice exchanges. He was just very sweet and very knowledgeable. So he did request Prabhupada. So Prabhupada had him do much of the translation work, just like Prajumna was doing, the editing, the Sanskrit. So he was doing that. But as you say, such a wonderful work that he put out. And there was also, because he had been with Ban Maharaj, and so it was very different. It was it was Gaudiya Mat, you know. So everything was different. And one time he was sitting with Prabhupada, and then their association was very sweet, because he was an early devotee. Early devotee means there was that Swamiji was there. Huh? It was before Prabhupada, you know. It was those times when you would sit and talk. You would see Prabhupada talk with, like they were friends. So he was talking, and he said to Prabhupada, he said, you know, of course, where I was, you know, they talk about Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his form in the spiritual world, and you're a spiritual master, and his Bhav in the spiritual world. He said, so Prabhupada, and this was a question would come up very rarely, he said, who are you? And Prabhupada just looked and he laughed like a boy. He said, we don't discuss these things. He said, we don't talk about this. And that was it. It was finished right then. So I was there. But I, you know, enjoyed his presence very much. Very wonderful person.
Just a sec, I haven't finished the story. Yeah.
So I haven't quite finished the story, and it goes like this. So what is the learning? What is the learning for us this morning? The learning is that Srila Prabhupada came on the Jaladuta in those big up and down, you know, the waves, and I've gone all through that many times speaking here. And if Prabhupada is planting a seed in your heart, and with you taking then the responsibility to be the gardener of your seed, water it, take out the weeds, chant, because the chanting is destroying the seeds. There are many hundreds, millions, who knows how many seeds around the heart. That is the responsibility of the disciple. So, if you take initiation, whether it be Srila Prabhupada or whether it be the present initiating gurus, don't kick them in the teeth by leaving them and going to another guru and taking initiation from them. This is nonsense. You have to take it seriously, the relationship with your spiritual master. How do you think the spiritual master feels if you take initiation? That is his contract. He is giving contract. And you also have contract. but you don't sign the contract. And you go wandering off at your whim to look for another guru. This is not good. And I relate another story, and I'm sorry if it feels somewhat intense, but this is so important. In the talks between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy over that period of days, it was concluded that the relationship with the spiritual master is the highest spiritual principle, beyond and above everything else. Everything goes to the spiritual master. Nothing can, you can't go this way, up, down, round the sun. No. So there was our god brother, and I won't name the god brother, but again it's instructive, especially for the younger devotees that are just coming through. It's very important. And we had a god brother, and I was in Vrindavan here after the opening of the temple, and he was making the Gurukul syllabus for Srila Prabhupada, ready for the boys. And when Srila Prabhupada came to Vrindavan to check the syllabus, it wasn't correct. It was nothing that really Prabhupada wanted. So Prabhupada was chastising and saying, this is not what I want. I thought you knew what I wanted, but you don't know. So he became so impacted by Srila Prabhupada's chastisement that he became very contemptful. He was full of contempt and resentful, to such an extent that he came into Prabhupada's room one day and said to Srila Prabhupada, please give me your mercy that I can find another guru. Can you imagine going into Prabhupada's room and saying that? And then he just ran out of the room, and we've never seen him since. And Prabhupada was so impacted by what our godbrother had said. He says, yes, I will give you my blessings that you will never find a guru. So imagine now, Brahmanda Brahmate, how long will he float in the Brahmanda, in the creation of Brahma? Prabhupada says, I have never ever heard such an instruction, such a thing come out of Prabhupada's mouth. So please be mindful of that relationship with your gurus. Okay? Hare Krishna.
If it's okay with everybody, I'd just like to add a little anecdote. It's interesting because it concerns both the Gurukul and Bon Maharaj. In 1975, Prabhupada decided he would go and visit Bon Maharaj. And it was Brahmananda Maharaj and myself, we accompanied Srila Prabhupada to Bon Maharaj's mutt. And the reason that we were going there was because Prabhupada noted that that large piece of land just across the road from our temple, which is known as the Bon Maharaj Institute, he had been given 60 acres of land to develop a campus. But, and that was really early on. This is something like in the 1940s that land was granted to him to be developed into an academic center to study the teachings of the Vaishnavas, all the great acharyas. And so Prabhupada noted that there was very few buildings, there was very little of that land was being utilized properly. So he decided, well, let me go down and speak with Bon Maharaj and see if he would agree to give a donation of some of that land, say about 1 acre or something, because Prabhupada wanted a Gurukul established here, so that all the Western devotees' children could get a good education in this wonderful atmosphere, this transcendental atmosphere. So we went there. It was the first time I'd ever met with Bon Maharaj, and Bon Maharaj was wearing a sannyas dhoti, but he was wearing Western shoes, and he was also keeping hair. But he was very warm in his reception to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was saying some things about the preaching in the West, and how so many children are being born in our society, and how he wanted them to get the opportunity to come here to Vrindavan. And I noticed that you've got so much land still lying vacant. So I'm humbly requesting you, if you could donate 1 acre of land so we can build a Gurukul building. So Bon Maharaj heard this request, and then he said, oh yes, I've actually heard a lot about your successful preaching in the West, and it is true, we don't have too many buildings. What about if you could build us a library? We need a library building over there for all the books that we're gathering together. And then we can, see the possibility of giving you land for the Gurukul. And so we were innocently listening to this conversation, and it sounded like it was perhaps going to happen. And then after a few moments, Prabhupada looked at his watch, but he'd always do that when he wanted to leave a place. And so he said, no, I've got to go back now. Thank you very much for allowing us to have this meeting. And as soon as we got in the car to come back to the Krishna Balaram Mandir, Prabhupada made such a heavy statement. He said, even if Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, with a straw in his mouth, fell at the feet of Bon Maharaj, he would never give land. That was Prabhupada's conclusion. He gave him an opportunity, and he blew it. He blew it to help Srila Prabhupada, you can say. So that's the type of, perhaps that mentality was perhaps absorbed also by Hrishikeshananda while he was in Bon Maharaj's presence. Prabhupada also noted too that Bon Maharaj had built himself a Samadhi Mandir. And he said, this is very unusual. Generally speaking, the followers of the Guru, they build the Samadhi Mandir, not the Guru himself. He doesn't prepare himself for going into Samadhi, into that temple. And so the conclusion about the Gurukul was that then Prabhupada called me later on that same day. He said, I want you to go and speak to our very dear friend Bhagaji, and please ask him on my behalf if he could purchase some land, because there was where the Gurukul building is right now, that was just an empty field. And I said, but Prabhupada, shouldn't you be doing that? Because you're very, very close to him. He said, no, he said, if you go, he will not refuse. So I went and asked on Srila Prabhupada's behalf. And not only did he agree to purchase the land, but he made all the journeys to Muzaffarnagar, because there were many family members involved in this piece of land, and they weren't here in Vrindavan, they were in Muzaffarnagar, which is quite a distance away. It's on the way to, I think, Haridwar. Yes, it's actually very close to Meerut, and Meerut is on the way to Haridwar and Rishikesh. And he also paid all the legal fees. He said, I'm going to do all these things on one condition, that you name my mother. I don't want my name there on the plaque. I want my mother's name. And you can see that plaque, which is on the outside of the building, higher up, still there. And the foundation stone was laid by Srila Prabhupada on Radhastami Day, 1975. We were there, right? All of us were there for that. And, yeah. So, all glories to Bhagaji for being such a wonderful, not just friend, but being a wonderful donor for that Gurukul building.
Now you speak because I have to go, so you can close that.
In 1973, I was with Srila Prabhupada, and I was brahmachari at that time, and it was in Mayapur. So everything was very new to me. And it was a day Prabhupada traveled to Navadvip to see his godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj. And